Hey everyone. So I've been hard at work getting the new video ready, as well as other projects, and I thought I'd take a break from designing this bedroom to making something a bit more homely. For you see, this house needs a grandmother to live in it. And you, my dear viewer, need someone to show you tender loving care by making you lots of cookies. So then I jumped into ClickPaint Studio and quickly sketched myself a granny. And then I got to work. This video is going to be rather long and different from what this channel normally broadcasts. So grab your mouse and your popcorn, for we are about to make a family member. Oh, and just so you know, yes, I am Grandma's favorite, because unlike you lot, I actually lived with her, and she told me that I was indeed her favorite. So here we go. So to start off making my model, I needed a reference image, which I have made too, so we're all good. To bring it in, I hit Shift A, and then I went to Images and Reference Pick. And then I brought them in one at a time. Now after bringing them in, I'm going to want to position them in a scene, so it makes it a little bit easier to model. With this one selected, I just hit R and typed in 90 for 90 degrees. And then I went over here to the Items tab, and then I moved it a -3 on the x-axis, and I just typed it in on the top. Next is the front-facing drawing, so let me just move that backwards on the y-axis. About 2 meters would do fine. And now I'm pretty much ready for modeling. So I kind of wanted to try something that Stark did by bringing in a cube, subdividing it, and then just moving the lines around. Then I decided, yeah, screw that noise, and I'm just going to do it my way. So I just brought in a cube and scaled it down with S, and then, you know the drill. I did subdivide it, but I decided that I was just going to go ahead and resize it, apply it, and then slice the bloody thing in half, and then just work with the front faces. I guess I like feeling like I have full control over what I'm moving around, so I usually work by vertice, so that's fine. Alright, that works for me. So the next thing to do is to add a mirror modifier. So I went over to the Modify tab, Mirror Modifier, and you know what? We don't need these other faces either. So let's just go ahead and get rid of them. That one, and that one, and get rid of those faces. We don't need them. And from here, we can go ahead and select these vertices and move them into position. Now, of course, I'm not going to follow the curvature 100%, but realistically, we don't need to. I'm doing another PS1 model, so I mean, it doesn't really need to follow the curvature too well. I'm working with, and sometimes I like to have some of my vertices, be on the same level as each other, so I can go ahead and copy the Z-axis and paste it into another vertice. That way they're straight if I need them to be straight. Oh, to snap to the side like this, I'm hitting 3 on my numpad. And then I move these vertices wherever I need them before hitting the 1 key in the numpad to switch to the front side.
And then I finagle the mesh just a little bit more before moving on.
And from here I start building on the mesh by hitting E to extrude, and moving around by, scaling with S or G to move the vertices around a bit. And this entire section is just getting the general shape of the head. I'm not really worried too much about it being precise, especially since I still have to kind of figure out how this scarf thing is going to work as far as mesh goes. In the end, I just decided I was just going to paint it on. The hair is going to end up being a separate model altogether, kind of extruded from the head in and of itself, but for now, yeah, I'm just focusing on just kind of getting the general shape, making sure it's nice and round where it needs to be, flat in other places, especially the face. The face in these characters needs to be flat. And right there, I merged any geometry for facial expressions anyway. I pretty much just swap textures to animate faces, so I pretty much need them to be as flat as possible so you can see it. And as you can see right there, I merged 2 vertices by hitting Alt-M and collapsing at center. So yeah, a lot of this is just moving vertices around to match the silhouette and getting the shape of this headscarf down. It kind of pinches in a bit like this in the back, but it's not that bad. I found that the back there was a little difficult. And then when I'm ready, close it in, I hit the F key between these 2 edges right here to fill it in. And yeah. Just move things around a bit more. That's pretty much the name of this game. And to fill in this gap, I grab both those edges, hit F, and then I made this line by hitting, I think for you guys it'll be Control R, but for me it's OSR to make a little edge loop. And then I just filled in those to complete this little thing right here. And then decided, hey, I don't particularly want this little edge right here. I'd rather just make it a nice little vertice, so then I collapsed it. To do that, I just went ahead and grabbed this line right here, and then I hit Alt-M and collapsed it at center. And yeah, now I have this wonderful little jawline to just move up and down. And then yes, more vertice moving. And so far, that's looking rather nice. So now it's time to work on her body. I'm going to go ahead and bring in the cube by hitting Shift-A and bringing in this nice little cube. Now, I don't really need this cube. I just need the front face. So I hit 7 to go to the top view, and then I'm just going to select all these other faces and get rid of it, and bada bing, bada boom. I'm done with this. Make me a nice edge loop, delete the side over here. Well, when I'm ready, scale it down a bit, move it up, and then I can delete that. And then I can go ahead and add this mirror modifier. Hit that clipping button, and now I'm ready to go. Now I'm going to start off with the chest area. Let me just go to the side view and just kind of, move these back to where they need to be. And I just need to get the general shape. The general shape of the bosom. Let me move my vertices around like so. Yep. And once again, I'm just kind of getting just a general shape. Once again, low poly, so I don't need too much detail, but I would like it to kind of follow the curvature just a bit. And as you notice, it's going to have to pinch down here at the bottom where the apron is, cinching a bit. So I kind of have to be mindful of that. But from here, I just take full advantage of it being a low poly model, and I can just move my lines and faces wherever I need to. Hit E to extrude, and then I can start adding some roundness to her body. Round, and yeah, that's looking fine so far. And then I can just move these down a bit, because, generally, it still needs to look like a human body, okay? I know she's a lovely old lady, she's grandma, and we're not trying to make her too attractive, but we at least need to respect her form and make it look like a human body. Like this, for example. That does not work, so we're just going to move that back. And right now, as you'll see, it looks like she's not really right. She doesn't really have much of a neck. But that's fine. Just move this back a bit. And yeah. And I have to keep reminding myself during this entire process that a lot of this is going to be done with texture. I just need a silhouette. So as long as it follows the general silhouette of the drawing, you'll be fine. Now, the hunch was a bit of an interesting thing to make. Haven't really done too many of them. But yeah, went ahead and take that edge right there, rotated it, and just kind of moved it around. The back really doesn't need too many faces, but so a small amount will do. So that's pretty much the mentality I was working with. Just getting just kind of getting the silhouette right, and the textures will pretty much take care of the rest. And just getting that silhouette as close as possible. Oh yeah, and then of course there's the shoulders. Now this shirt has a bit of, not really shoulder pads, but it cinches there, kind of at the edges there. And I wasn't exactly sure how to do this. So this entire section is just me kind of figuring out how in the world am I going to make this work. So there's a lot of making edge loops and merging some vertices and also getting rid of faces. And then trying some tries. Realistically, if it's in a place where the mesh isn't going to bend or bend too much, you can have tries. The reason you don't really want to have tries in your models too often is because it can get in the way of your mesh bending properly. Now, it is true that whenever you export this into an FBX, all those quads will become tries. But when building it, try to stay away from tries as much as you can, unless, once again, it's in areas that just really aren't going to bend. And since with my rigging, the upper arms and the shoulders aren't really connected in terms of skeleton-wise, I kind of just leave those two separate, because that's kind of how old games did it anyway. If they weren't using rigging, doesn't matter. Anyway, yeah, it doesn't matter. So this is fine. After a while, I finally landed on a pretty good look, a pretty good topology here. So it's time to start working on a neck. And I just grabbed the edge loop, and then I just extruded by hitting E, and then merged it at the top. I scaled it in a bit too, just make sure it's a nice little form. Hit S to scale it in, and eventually hit F or something. Get these vertices right. Give me a moment. Yep, let me move this around. and looks about right. And yeah, then fill these in with F, and there you go. And then I can adjust the height of these things if I want to by, you know, copying the Z-axis and just kind of pasting them in the other ones. Just kind of even it out. Just kind of how I like to work with things once in a while. Just keep some of my lines and vertices even. It just makes it a little bit easy. And then, of course, finagle just a little bit more to make it look even more perfect. Yeah, that's looking about right. Then after that's done, let me just lift this head up, and then it's time to work with the dress. Now, most of the dress and the apron is going to be a texture, so I don't really have to worry too much about details. Once again, it's all about the silhouette. Does this more or less match the drawing that I'm working with? And I still want to keep my polygon count kind of low, so I don't need to go too crazy. Though I just mostly spend my time just kind of, you know, reorganizing all these vertices around, maybe making them even with each other, moving them around, and then extruding them with E. And then making the general shape of the dress and apron, all the way down to the feet. Once again, I'm using G to move these vertices up and down, and to scale them outwardly, I can just select an edge loop and hit S to actually scale it. And then use 3 on the numpad to get that side view, and let's go ahead and make the back of her. Just following the dress there, and then selecting these 2 edges and hitting F, then S to scale them in. I don't really need to add any vertices here, this should be enough, so I'm just going to scale them and move them as I need to. Pretty straightforward and simple. Once again, I'm just really trying to get that silhouette just right. I also need to keep in mind how this dress is going to move when animating. Typically, where there's going to be moving parts, you kind of want a little bit more mesh and vertices, just so there's more to move around. But realistically, she probably won't need to move too extreme, so I can kind of keep things a little bit less dense when it comes to faces. And I need to make sure I get Granny's figure right because, I mean, she's an old lady and therefore just slightly plump. And then we move on to her rump. So I'm just going to hit K and cut another line just right here so I can just go ahead and bring in these vertices a bit. Hit enter to, you know, apply it. And let's see, just move these things around. And yeah, that's looking fine. This is also kind of a bendy point, I think, when she's going to be animating. So I need to make sure that, you know, there's form and function here as well. And I also get a nice little curvature with the dress there if I add that little rump piece anyway. And that more or less looks how I need it. And let me just move these around a bit. Yeah. This is also a nice little benefit of using the mirror modifier. I can work on one side and it applies to the other. It's absolutely beautiful. So there you go. Okay, the next thing I'm going to need is to make an arm. Luckily, that's just going to be a cube. So I'm just going to hit Shift A in a second. Okay, Shift A, bring in the cube, 3 on the numpad, and then rotate using R and 45 degrees, and then shrink it in a bit, and let's go ahead and move it. Now I'd like to fit rather nicely into that arm socket right there, and I'd like to conform a little bit to the how the shirt itself is going to be made. So you know, select its vertices, hit G to move it around, and then you know I extrude it a bit with E just to kind of get just kind of the general feel. And then merge these with Shift M or just M. On PC, I think it's actually M. Yeah, it is. I recently found that out while, you know, doing this on a PC. So, okay, just M for you, just so you know. And then, you know, merging things at center or whatever you need to merge it to. Usually I go with that last, but it doesn't matter. But yeah, just completing these arms. I like segmenting my arms personally. I don't usually I don't always do flexible, bendy, connected arms. And for this bit, I'm just going to hit K again, add another line, hit enter, and then I'm just going to go ahead and add some more vertices here and there. Delete those faces because I don't really need them right now. I'm going to use a mirror modifier at the end of the day to kind of even this out, but I just wanted to conform it to the general shape of her shirt. Otherwise, it just kind of looked weird. Let me get rid of that, and then, yep, connect those. Hitting F and fill that with F, and yep, there we go. There's that. I have the perfect front side of the arm. It looks like it's conforming nice. It's fitting snug. Not perfect, but then again, it doesn't really need to be perfect. So, I was just, once again, worried of just getting it right. Then use the mirror modifier on the Y side and the X side, because I'd like to mirror it over. And yeah, that looks nice. Oh, gotta turn the clipping back on, and bada bing, bada boom. There you go. It's perfect. It's working. I like it. And the upper arm is more or less done. Let me just bring that out a bit. And voila, that should be good. Let me just apply this real fast, and then we can work on the forearm. So this time I wanted to try something different, so I just went ahead and deleted the other side, used the mirror modifier again, and then grab this section right here. Give me a second. Then I duplicated it with Shift D, and then rotated it with R 90 degrees. Hit P and made it its own object, and then just went through a few things where I flipped it on its y-axis using S, Y, -1, and maybe X as well. Let's just kind of see, okay, how am I going to position this? How do I want this? In the end, I just decided, screw it, I'll just work with this. I'll just move it up and move vertices by vertices. And just kind of generally line it up at first, and then go into see-through mode by hitting Z, and then move these vertices up and down to just kind of match them up. This is going to be a rotate point. So I can even, when it comes to rigging and animating these things, I can set this up to where these vertices do not split apart during animation. That's just that's in the weight painting segment of this video. But even if they're going to overlap and kind of bend through each other, I'd still kind of like them to be as close as I possibly can. That way it looks a little bit better when these things animate. It doesn't have to be perfect. I can make it perfect if I want to, but for the most part, it's a nice flow. One line just leads to another, and it's just a smooth transition between these two objects. Visually, it looks nice, and functionally, it works pretty well too. To make this bend better, I could add more vertices, but I'm not really going to make these things really flex on each other, so it doesn't matter that much. And then next is the feet. And I went ahead and brought in this cube while I was in edit mode for the forearms. Realized the error of my ways. Hit P to make it its own object. Centered that bad boy, and then I scaled it into position. So that took care of the mirror modifier. And then after that, I just kind of generally put the feet in a kind of a general position and just kind of moved it around. The feet don't have to be overly complicated. In fact, they're really just, in my opinion, they're just kind of general shapes and blobs that kind of represent feet in this kind of graphical stylings. And realistically, you could make them smaller in terms of your poly count, or you can build them up relatively higher poly count than you kind of generally need to, and then shrink the poly count whenever you have the general shape that you want, which is pretty much what I ended up doing. And that's generally how I tend to work, is I kind of build them up probably slightly higher than they need to be, and then whittle it down whenever I'm done. And then add faces where I think it probably needs it. Realistically, I don't have to, like right here, I kind of pinch these down a bit, because realistically, I don't need them to be that round right there. Some people may not like the look of it, but functionally it's fine. And just so these feet aren't really seen, really, because they're not going to go all the way up her body. I just brought it up a bit. That way, it's gonna be hidden by the dress anyway, so it doesn't really matter. So I'm pretty much building it how Link was constructed in Ocarina of Time. And then once again, I'm not doing anything fancy. E to extrude, G to move things around. I'm expanding vertices by selecting them and then hitting S to scale them outward. Nothing really too fancy. Really, the bare basic movements is really what I use. I guess you could say fancy cuts here and there, but realistically, the simpler the better. The more complicated it is, just the more time it's probably going to take up. Now, hands are not my forte. In fact, my rule of thumb is I don't like to make hands or thumbs. So for this one, I was surprised how it turned out. So I brought in a cube by hitting Shift A, and I, just went to edit mode, scaled it down with S, and S on the the Z axis, just kind of squish it, bring in this mirror modifier, and then I just kind of got to work. Scaling it in, and you know, I just really just didn't. It doesn't need to be hyper complicated, really. So you know, I'm just kind of getting the general basic form of the hands and the fingers, extruding with E, and moving things kind of up and down, just kind of making like a mitten. That's kind of what these low poly hands are. They're just mittens, and this is more or less a good shape. You can do a little bit more by bringing this one out a bit. These, moving on the Y-axis, using G to kind of move these things around, and hitting the Y key to snap them to an axis, and then extruding it back here a bit, and you know, adding more lines here and there. Because right now I'm going to make a thumb. Now, usually thumbs are very difficult to make, but with a simple mitt like this, all I need to do is grab these two sides, hit E to extrude. Let me go to the side real fast, and then I can extrude along here, and then just scale it down a bit. And then at that point, it's just, you know, scale it, extrude it where you need to, and then position the thumb. I'm not really going to be animating these sections, so they can be a bit stiff and rigid. So yeah, that actually worked rather well for me. Now I don't need these many polygons for a thumb, so I'm just going to grab this line right here, hit M, and collapse it at center. And there you go, a nice little cube for me. I'm going to expand that a bit with E and bring it over, shift it around a bit, and voila, I have myself a workable thumb. And just because I'm me, I'm just going to get rid of those faces, get the nice edge loop, extrude that, collapse it at center, and now I have a little point. That's for the C. That is purely just for unwrapping. I find that just kind of helps with texture work. Now I don't really need these lines right here, so I'm just going to go ahead and collapse these at last. So select those, hit M last, because I don't really need them. And I would like the end bit there that's going to be extending into the wrist to just be a square as well. So I'm just kind of making also making the poly count lower on the hands, and while still kind of keeping the general aesthetic, as well as, you know, unwrapping functionality. For the most part, that looks fine. Let me just get rid of the other side, and then I hit / on the numpad to do this, so I can kind of just view it individually. And let me make another cut here by K and slicing, hitting enter to say, okay, I'm good with that. And then I'm going to select these, hit X to delete them. And then I can kind of just morph this into just a better shape to, you know, collapse it in whenever I'm done. Just give me a second. Let me move this around. Yeah, all this right here is just serving the purpose of just making a wrist. Let me just, there you go. E to extrude that bad boy and bring it in a bit with S. Bring it up with G. And then just kind of just see how this looks when it comes to the sleeve. It looks fine. Let me just move it around with G. Scale it a bit on the Y-axis there. Yes, by hitting S and Y to snap it on the Y-axis. Move it around a bit on the X-axis by hitting G and X. And then I can just, you know, collapse this whenever I'm done. And yeah, that's pretty much making a hand in a nutshell. Just the very bare basics. It won't animate properly, but realistically, I don't need it to. Let me just collapse these because once again, I don't really need more polygons than that. And for my personal needs, that's fine. This is great. I can unwrap this thing pretty effectively, and it's not going to cause me too much problems. And that's pretty much it on the hand. But once again, hands are one of the most very weird to make and rather difficult for even what it is here. So I label that a success. So the next big decision on my list is how am I going to make the hair? I could either just make it a big mesh blob thing or just use like a plane or something, a collection of planes. For that though, I just decided, you know, I'm just going to get rid of some of these vertices by collapsing with M and at center. That way I just have, you know, less vertices to really work with. And then of course, you know, move my vertices around a bit to get that nice, lovely shape in. Because it'll take a while before I'm actually happy with the shape. So, you know, I got to make sure that silhouette is as perfect as I possibly can. And once I'm happy with that, I'm just going to hit apply on my mirror modifier, and then I'll be hitting 2 on my keyboard to select edges. And then I'm just going to select these 2 right here, and then just extrude them out with E. Very simple, and just kind of get a general shape. That swirl bit on the hair, that's just going to be a texture. In fact, a lot of the hair is just going to be a texture. And then once I thought Granny's hair looks perfect, I just selected all the faces on the head instead of the hair for some reason, and then I hit P and made it its own object. And lastly, when it came to raw mesh, I need to make the little bottom part of her headscarf there. So I used you guessed it, cube, rotated it 45 degrees, and then collapsed one of the faces, brought it in a bit, and then extruded the other one, and, oh, hold on, let me get rid of that. Let me get rid of that edge, hold on. Yeah, extrude that a bit, collapse that, and voila, I just have this very basic shape for the knot. From there, I just moved it all into position, and then I selected the edges, after a while by hitting the 2 key, and then grabbing one of the sides there and then extruding them outward. Now, some of you are probably thinking, oh, we're ready to unwrap. You would be wrong. I know for a fact that A, she's not in the right position because I'd like her toes to be on the red line, and I know she's also too small. So I'm just going to go ahead and make a new collection and then name it size, go up to File, Import, and FBX, and I'm going to import just a kind of a general character that I have that has the size that I need. MRG guy, bring him in, and voila. I'm just going to get rid of the skeleton that's going to be brought in, and then I will just get her all sized up. And then from here, I just selected my parts and then applied the mirror modifier whenever I saw fit, selected all of them with A, and then hit S to scale. And then I brought this lovely man in to do a size comparison, and then I just spent the next few minutes figuring out exactly how big I wanted to make Granny. Once I got Granny into a proper size, I needed to apply the scaling. So I went up to Object, then Apply, and Scale. And this changes all the transforms from whatever they were to just 1. And this doesn't actually mess with the mirror modifiers or any of your modifiers, really. You're just scaling it up and just applying it. It works pretty well, and I use it quite often, actually. Alrighty, and now we are ready to mark our seam, so I'm just going to select these edges right here while I'm in edit mode, and I'm also going to get the ones up here. And then to actually mark my seams, just give me a second, I'm going to go all the way up over here to edge, mark seam, and yep, they're all marked. Next after that, I'd like to go ahead and apply that and go over to UV layouts, put my cursor down here in this corner until I see that little cross, pull it up, and give myself a little shader tab. This is in case I want to, put a material on there or something. It's kind of a habit that I have. Now for unwrapping the face, there are a few things I want to keep in mind. First is the space that I'll be taking up. The bigger something is on your UV screen, the more pixel density that you can have. For myself, I like to animate my faces and make them nice and expressive, so I'd like the faceplate to be relatively big. So let me just hit 3, hit 3, so I can actually grab these faces. Give me a second, there you go. And then to unwrap my model, hit U and hit the unwrap key. Although you could also do project from view. And what that does is that it unwraps your UVs based on the position of your camera. The downside with this is if you have any vertices or meshes behind it, it won't really capture it. So use it at your discretion. And now from here, I'm just gonna kind of move things around in the general position. I'm gonna hit the 4 key, that way I can select an entire piece. Then I can move around a whole lot easier. Move these into position, scale them down with S. The controls are exactly how you would expect them to be. And then, of course, it was time for the hair. The second verse, same as the first, I just selected it and went into edit mode to go ahead and do my edits. Give me a second. There you go. And I just selected the edge and went up to, This time I hit U, I believe, and then I went ahead and hit unwrap. Actually, if you hit U, it brings up a menu where you can actually mark seams there as well as unwrap. So it's pretty handy. You can do it either both ways, but after a while, I just kind of figured, this is faster, and it saves you just a little bit of time. And then from here, it's just reorganizing all my UVs, just trying to figure out, okay, what is the best use of space? How can I condense this? How can I optimize this for better texture performance? The scarf thing kind of ended up not being quite as important as, say, like the hair or the face, so I adjusted accordingly. So eventually I decided that the headscarf really didn't need to take up that much space. So I flipped it around by hitting S and then -1. Then I went up to this magnet button, set it to point, and hit the magnet button. Yeah, that way it would go ahead and snap into position, and I could snap it over the other one. Luckily, since they were unwrapped evenly, so all I needed to do was flip it on the X-axis, and then I could just move it over the other one. Bada bing, bada boom. They are now overlapping each other. This means that if I paint over it, it's basically going to mirror one side over the other. But that's fine. It's a headscarf. It doesn't matter. Next was, of course, the little bow tie thing. And it was actually very, very simple. Really. Just mark the edges, hit U, and then mark seam, and then U again, and unwrap. Well, hit A, and... Well, select what I need first, then go ahead and unwrap, and then select them using 4, make sure that magnet thing is on, overlap them, and over here I just had to kind of align these on their little axis right there, just kind of line them up. And that is Shift W, I believe. Yeah, Shift W, and then aligning on one of these axes. Yep, see I got it wrong there, so I'll just do it on the X. There you go. And on the middle one, just do both axes, and that's fine. Then take the magnet off, that way it doesn't snap to a grid, and then I can move it wherever I want. From here, I select these other things, and then, yeah, I can just unwrap them and overlay them on top of each other. For that, I'll just have to, select one, rotate it, 90 degrees. Do the S-1 thing to flip it over, and I'll have to use the magnet tool to snap a vertex on top of another vertex. That way they're at least on top of each other, so I only have to draw this thing once. And that's fine. And then I can resize it and move it where I need to. For this one, I decided to make 2 textures, a head and a body. So I decided I would group the head, the hair, and that tie thingy all on one map. And from there, I just decided, okay, what needs to take up the most space? Just move things around and just kind of make a general guess. I know I'm going to be working with 256 by 256. I can lower it if I really want to, but I think working with 256 by 256 now, at the very least, for me, it's a good detail level. And I can get things looking pretty darn good. And if I crunch it a bit, it generally doesn't, the texture doesn't deteriorate for me that much. So yeah, now I'm just thinking, okay, do I optimize the space this way, that way, and when it's all good, it's all said and done, I just got to make sure that all of my little modifiers are done. In that case, I'll shift-click all these and then join them together by right-clicking and then going to the join option. Rename this to head, I think. Yep. And then I can just hide it. And I'm ready to work on the body. The thing I love about lo-fi graphics is that they're easy to work with, easy to edit, but also, personally, I find them very artistically pleasing. But as far as you may be concerned, maybe you like them specifically because they're rather easy to work with. And here I like to, align my upper arms and forearms together. When it comes to texturing, it makes it slightly easier. That way I automatically know where the creases more or less will be. So it makes texturing them just a little bit easier. And from here, I'm just grabbing 2 vertices and then just, snapping them on a vertex. The whole Shift S and then, snapping into whatever vertex that I need. And then I can do the same for the sides. And just kind of even everything out. They don't really need to be completely straight sometimes. In fact, it's really best not to overly warp your UVs because the way they unwrap is kind of already how they're shaped in a 3D space, but it's nice to make just a little edits here or there. But doing it too much, you'll end up warping your texture a lot. So you gotta kind of be careful with that, and it's more like you kind of have to develop an eye for it. After you do it enough times, it just kind of becomes second nature. And right now I'm just getting the general shape. And yeah, I'm just at this point I'm just fixing some UV edits here and there, just organizing all my pieces so I kind of know where they are. And once again, this one rotating that really 180 degrees would have been nice. And that would probably be fine. I could actually flip it, except that's actually two sides of the same boot, so I'm just going to leave it like that. That way I can keep both sides a little bit different if I really want to. And yeah, that hand... now for the chest, let me rotate this a bit. I noticed that if I keep the chest that size at the moment, I'm not going to get a lot of pixel density, so I'm just going to go ahead and bloat that up by selecting the vertices that I want and then hitting S to scale it up. Give me a second. There you go. And then I can hit 4 to grab the entire thing, flip it with R at 180, and then just kind of shove it kind of where I need to, scale it again with S. And then now I can just kind of move my pieces that I want in a general in a general area. Just kind of, once again, attempting to optimize the space as best that I can. Just trying to fit everything that I want in there. Once again, I'm working with 256 by 256 for this particular texture. Because there's so much on here, and each particular UV, all the UV spaces are going to be smaller than the others, I know that this one will pixelate a little bit more. So maybe bringing down my texture resolution at this point would probably crunch things a little too much, depending. It really just depends, like how much I can actually get out of the space that I'm allotting myself. And we want to make sure that we use as much of the space as possible. Now, these shapes are a bit weird. I guess you could straighten them up, like the body right there. I could probably straighten them up, but I don't really like the texture warping that much. I like to keep kind of the general shape. Some people are really good at essentially turning almost everything into cubes and working with them. I haven't had quite as much luck, or at least I haven't gotten the results that I personally wanted to. So I allow some of the curviness to kind of, be left behind. The downside of that is there's some space that you probably could cover up if you weren't going to do that, but it's fine. My textures seem to work pretty good as is, so I'm okay with that for now. Okay, lastly, let's double check that. That's fine. And then I'll just go ahead and apply all of my modifiers, because I shouldn't need them anymore. Because now all my UVs are all set up, and I can now move on to the next section.
Which in my case is just re-editing and redoing some of my mesh. So I'm going to select this head, and I'm just going to make a backup of it just in case, and I'm just going to go ahead and collapse some of these vertices. And do it on one side, and realistically I should have put my mirror modifier on, but at the moment I'm just kind of testing some things out, making some cuts, pinching things, and seeing how this will look. And whenever I achieve my shape, then I can go back and, collapse vertices wherever I really don't need them. And then I decided I didn't like that, and, I did it again. And this time I'm just collapsing some vertices. Now this does mean that the hair gets messed up, and I also have to redo some of my UVs, which is fine. And this is when I also noticed, oh, I didn't do the other side. So I'll just go ahead and do it manually. Hide that part right there. And yeah. Oh yeah, you can also hide pieces by selecting them and hitting H, and it won't affect things. Once again, let me just flip my vertices, move them aside, overlap them. And now I kind of had to just kind of redo my vertices. Again. But that's fine. That's fine. It also means that I can kind of like... Realistically, sometimes the process actually involves breaking what you've made and kind of rebuilding it. Try to get something that's just a little bit better, maybe a little bit more optimized than before. But at the end, you usually come up with something that's probably a little bit better. And then now, let me see, let me make this, let me just bring that in a bit. It doesn't actually have to match up with any of the other vertices, because at this point, it doesn't matter. Her headband's only going to go back so far, so I just moved it to its own object, and then, yeah, that was it. For right now, I'll just keep them separate, because now I'm going to make a nose. Now, in the future, I decided that I didn't like this nose, and I just built it out of the mesh. But for now, as part of the process, I just made myself a little button nose just out of a cube. Yeah, using the same techniques that, of course, before I've been using this entire time. And I figured this will be fine. I wasn't really quite sold on it, but I decided to leave it alone. Next, of course, I needed to mark all the seams. Select your edges, hit U, mark seam.
hit A to select everything, and then U again, and select unwrap, and then redo my redo my UVs once again, but this time to include this cute little button nose that I ended up not using anyway. But it is fine. Once again, it's all part of the process, and in the end, it turned out really good. So, hey, sometimes you make small mistakes here and there, and sometimes you actually end up keeping them. It doesn't matter. Whew. And now that my UVs are all set and done, it's now time to make myself some textures. So I'm just going to go ahead and make my little folder here in my project file. I'll just name it textures, and bada bing, bada boom. Then we're going to go into Clip Paint Studio, and I'm just going to make a 256 by 256 texture. This I'm just going to export and import it into Blender so I can paint over it. As for colors to start out with, I tend to use a gray color to start out with. That's just kind of what I like to start with. Normally, because what I generally like to do is do things kind of grayscale, black and white, and I just kind of like paint height and detail. But this time I decided I just paint color, because I wanted something nice and wholesome, and I wanted those colors to just be part of the process. So I'll make my 256 by 256 texture, save it so I can always come back to it, and then let's make another one, a 256 by 256. This one will be for the body. That way I go ahead and have my painting projects there already. Now, I won't really be doing too much painting in these programs. This is really just to house the project so I can make any changes that I want. I'll actually be doing the vast majority of my painting in Blender, because I personally find it more helpful to actually paint on the model versus on this 2D thing. I can do that later whenever, say, I'm making different facial expressions for Granny, but for now, it's just simpler for me to paint directly on the model. But this next part is actually rather useful, so I'll go ahead and show you. So if you've brought in like another object that has extra materials on it that you don't want in your project and you don't want to reuse them, you can actually delete them. So give me a second. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make look at my textures. Then I'm going to go up here to this tab right here. That one. Go to Blender Files, and then I'm going to go to Materials, and from there I can just select the ones I don't want and delete them. I could use them if I wanted to, but right now I'd rather just delete them because I don't want them. After that, I'll just go back to my view layer and go ahead and set everything else up. So I'm going to need a material for the body and the head. So rename this one to Slav Granny. Slav Granny face, even though it's on the body right now, but whatever. And then name this. Yeah, let me fix that. Body. Give me a second. Body. There you go. And then this one, I'll change to Slav Granny face. Okay, so I want to go ahead and start painting, so I'm just going to go over to Texture Paint, go way down here until that turns into a little cross, pull that up, and switch it once again to Material View. Turn this to 0, Specularity, because I don't need it. Shift A, Texture, Image Texture, put Color to Color, and I'm going to change this to Closest so it pixelates a bit. And then I'm going to go ahead and bring in my texture, which is just great, and that's fine, which is what we need. That's all I need to start painting. I just wanted to cut, color difference, and that's fine. Now, for the hair, it's just going to be a texture. I'm just gonna paint that on, and then I'll go back into Clip Paint Studio and erase the alphas. Easy schmeezy lemon squeezy. Bring this up so I can actually see it, and I'm gonna move it to my second monitor so I can just start painting. And give me a second. There you go. Now from here, I'm gonna go back to the Modeling tab, and then I'm gonna select my head. And then I'm going to get rid of the things that I don't want by selecting specific pieces of mesh that I want. Hit L to select all of it because it's not really part of the same mesh. Then hit P to separate it. The hair should already be a separate object, so I should be good now. Yep, then I'm going to go back to the Texturing tab. Give me a second. Make sure my thing's back on so you can actually see my, the buttons I press, as good as that's going to do. Okay, hold on. There you go. Now it's back on. Okay, now I'm going to go back over to Texture tab. I'm going to hit /, and my stupid thing is not working again, but whatever. I'm going to be painting. It doesn't matter. And, yep. Now, I would like to copy the colors exactly. So I'm just going to open my original project for Granny, and I'm going to use the color picker to get the hex code of each color. So I'm going to grab the one for the face, copy that. I'm going to go back over to Blender. I'm going to go over here, right here, and go to Hex and paste in the code. Voila! Now the color is exactly the same. And from here, well, I'm going to start painting. Clearly. So the first order of business is just to block out the colors. So let's just make the strength at 100. And then I'm just going to color the... I'm just going to start blocking in my colors, you know? The flesh colors will be flesh colors. The hat will be a green color. I'm going to speed this up, and I'll be right back. Oh, I'm also going to turn symmetry on so I don't have to overwork myself. Okay, here we go. That way it covers both sides. All right. So yeah, when blocking out the colors at this point where I'm at, I want to be somewhat precise. Like say for this hat over here, that's a green color. Copy that hex code and, you know, just bring it over. I would like there to be as little you know, warping and fuzziness as possible when it comes to my painting. When I set the color, I'd like for that to be it, and then all the details are just based off of that. So give me a second, and I'll start painting. To make sure that I get things right, I will have to turn the camera a bit. And if I do make a mistake, it's not like I can't really go back or undo my progress, but I'd rather not to, so I'd like to get this as good as I can. So I'll be moving the camera quite a bit, switching colors back and forth, and just you know, really just blocking this out, trying to get it right. Try to get it right the first time, but, you know, things happen. And luckily the symmetry thing just kind of takes care of a lot of work, so it saves me a bunch of time. And then once I kind of get you know, the general space, and I'll clean up these edges a bit, but just going over it with the skin color, and yeah, I think we're ready now for some of the shadows and highlights. Now I'm going to work on the hat, so I'll change it to multiply, and I'll change the strength down to, I don't know, like 0.2 something, right? And then from there, I'll just start working, you know, the edges and seams, and really drawing in where the folds are going to be. I'm going to work from shadows to highlights. So I kind of want to get that little, you know how some grandmas will wear their little headscarves, they tuck it under, obviously they're going to tuck it under the chin, but the cloth needs to look that way. And so it kind of needs to look a little bit 3D. So that's all I'm doing. And I think the trick for this is really just to let the brush do most of the work, which is why I really like to keep my brush density, my brush strength down a bit. I don't really mind, you know, brushing over a few times. It generally looks good by the end of it. And I'd like to change how this thing is rendered, so I'm just going to go to this tab up here and then just change the render settings on this. And now it's time to get some of those highlights. So I'm going to change my brush to just add, and then I'm going to get these creases, and then after a while I'm just going to do kind of a general highlight on areas that aren't really pushed in so much. And it doesn't have to be overly precise. It can be, but once again, you got to let your brush do a lot of the work. And, you know, experimenting with different strengths of your brush can really help. And to get some of the creases and folds right, it's probably best to actually look at an example. I didn't this time around, and I was okay with that. You know, just alternate between, you know, shadows and highlights, and just kind of slowly over time, just build the wrinkles. For these wrinkles, you'll notice that at the top of the head, it folds less than near the bottom where you're actually, you know, crinkling it up. That's where the most tension is. So that's kind of what I'll be trying to emulate here and there. But there's also hair underneath the head, underneath this thing. So I mean, it's gonna have a little bumps here and there. But yeah, just slowly over time, just building it. Letting the brush do some of the works. Now for the sharper highlights, that's for like I'm specifically using that for, like, you know, sharper folds, really, or anything that really want to pop out. Generally, it's just kind of a general fuzz feel. And for the face, it's literally the same method. So I'm just gonna grab the flesh color and I'm gonna change it to multiply, and then I'm just gonna start building the face. Now I have my reference art over to the side on my other monitor, so you can't see it, but you know, I'm just gonna give her a nice little smile and just slowly, very slowly, just kind of almost sculpt the shape. Start with some lines that are hard to see at first, and then increase the size of my brush. Which, by the way, to increase or decrease your size, you use these bracket keys, like that. Yeah, see? And make little cavities for the eyes, and just kind of, you know, give her nice little happy eyes like that. Yeah, it's really nice. Just really just building this one thing at a time. Really focusing on shadows and highlights. If you want to use different colors to get the shape, you can. I would do that later in the project. For right now, I just like to just kind of like draw the general shape of things. Use shadows and highlights for really just to kind of like draw it out.
And like I said, I really think the best thing to do is just really let the brush do most of the work. You're really just kind of slowly hinting what you want, and the brush will just kind of let it happen, really. And once we get into the highlight phase, oh my goodness, it makes these things pop out. You need to be a little bit careful when adding highlights on things, like skin, for example. You don't want to overblow it. So just kind of gently put it on, and then just kind of, you know, just kind of hint at, you know, where the bone structure is. And, you know, if say like the nose right there is a little much, but, you know, you can always go back. But I kind of like it, really. I kind of liked it, so I kept it. You can also use the brush to kind of hint at extra little wrinkles and folds without actually drawing them in. Yeah, it's kind of a nice method there. And then here I'm just blocking a little bit of extra shadows and whatnot, just to really make the highlights pop just a little bit more. And then I just have a little chin underneath here, because, you know, Granny has a little bit of a chin. And yeah. And then more wrinkles at the top of the head. You know, gotta have those, because, you know, Granny is old. And then once again, using our highlights. You can actually work with different shades, as I've done. You know, sometimes switching between shades of, you know, in this case, skin, is really nice. Because, you know, realistically, you know, for these darker, let me save, some of these darker portions, like right here on the eyes, it makes it a lot easier to just go ahead and go to a darker shade. And plus, I like the color of the darker shade a bit more. And then get my highlights in with that shade, and also with highlights on a different shade, it kind of, you know, gives you a slightly different color of, you know, white skin. Okay, now it's time to do some of the hair. So I'm just going to change my brush back to mix, and then make it a nice gray color. And I'm going to start working on the hair. Now, if you remember, this model, especially the sides of the face, the head, they were mirrored on top of each other, which will become more apparent later. But I'm just going to kind of draw on the general shape of the hair once again.
Just kind of get some individual strands before increasing the size of my brush to kind of just color it in. And I kind of want to get a little bit of the flesh color in there because, you know, it's maybe the hair isn't that thick here. Maybe adjust the strength a bit so I can, you know, color it in right here and there. And then block out the shape just a little bit more. And then once I'm relatively happy with how that looks, I'll go ahead and work on shadows and highlights with the hair. So I'll move this down a bit, go to multiply so I get some shadows, and I'll add a seam here because that, you know, that's kind of where the hat's saying there'd be some shadows there. So I'll just kind of block that in and sculpt out the rest of the hair. I'm not really going to worry too much about drawing individual hairs. I'm just really more interested in kind of suggesting them. Which in this case is, you know, just a bunch of scratches, kind of just following the general path of the hair. And then taking advantage of, once again, shadows and highlights to really kind of give the illusion that, yes, these are indeed multiple hairs. Alrighty, and right here it became apparent to me that, oh yeah, these are mirrored. So there, that was a problem. If I try to draw on it, it'll kind of screw things up, so what do I do? Well, realistically, I can just save this and import it into Clip Studio, flip it manually in there, and yeah, retrospect, I guess I could have just mirrored it, but I'm just going to go to Image, Save As, and I'm just going to go ahead and save the texture. Yeah, and I'm going to bring it into Clip Studio, and I'm going to go ahead and make my edits. Okay, to correct this mistake that I don't want to do, I'm going to just duplicate my texture right here, and then I'm going to, you know, erase this bit right here. That way I have a full head. Then I'm just going to flip it on the horizontal axis, bada bing, bada boom. And then I'm going to lower the opacity, take this other one on, line it up, because technically it is mirrored, and then I'm just going to erase the part of the face that I don't need, and all I need to keep is the bangs, and that's how I'm going to fix my problem. And then I'll turn that opacity up, bada bing, bada boom. Okay, I am now going to move this back into Blender and then keep painting. Which means back in Blender, I'm just going to hit this File button, and I'm just going to hit, you know, Open again, and damn it, never mind, hold on, let me just select it again. There you go, never mind. Yeah, that's because the file names were different. Okay, now that I got that, we're all set to ready to go, and let's just continue painting. Hey, she's looking rather nice. So I'm going to go ahead and change the render settings to flat so I get a better view of what this actually looks like, you know, in the scene. And save this bad boy and, you know, continue painting. So yeah, I mean, so far everything looks nice. I have no real issues. I just want to add just a little bit more. More shadows, more highlights, and mostly more shadows. Because now that this thing is technically unlit, I can see kind of where I need to just add a little bit more. So with a bit of a wider brush, sometimes, I'm just going to go ahead and subtly add more shadows right here in eye sockets and where the wrinkles are going to be. That way they pop out just a little bit more and they look a little bit more real nice. But yeah, most of this at this point is just detail work. Oh, and if you look over to your right, I actually have the mirror function on because, you know, save myself some time. Now it's time to start decorating the headscarf. I'm just gonna go ahead and let the brush kind of, warp and stretch a little bit because, the cloth is kind of warped in and of itself, so that's fine. And if any of my dots or any of my drawings kind of land over a crease, well then I'll just use the same color and use the multiply effect to make some shadows. That way it gives the illusion of it creasing, because realistically, these creases don't really exist. They're just drawn on. They are an illusion of sorts. And yes, I found it very useful to keep symmetry on. And once again, to find symmetry, all you have to do is go to this Tools tab where I'm at, and it's just below the color picker under symmetry. It's pretty easy to find. And then way down here, yeah, I'm just gonna go ahead and make some ovals because this is when they start creasing up the most anyway. So warping your shapes just a little bit is always key. At first, I wanted to do a color that was a bit more complicated, but I figured the easiest method to go with was like flowers and polka dots, very simple shapes. Because as of yet, I haven't really quite mastered warping patterns. So this is pretty much actually my first attempt at it, I think. Or second, no, because I think I did it with Echo, actually. Then it's time to save it out by going over to Image, Save As, and then I'm just going to save over this. And then I'll be bringing it into Clip Paint Studio and moving it over to my, my actual drawing folder. Let me just copy that real fast. Yep. Open it over here. And yeah, it's a combination of copying it over and then pasting it in my actual project. And since there'll probably be a slight difference, so move this, finagle some things around, and yeah, there you go. Save it out and bring it back into the project. And now we're ready to work on the hair. So once I'm back in Blender, I'm going to switch over to modeling mode so I can just select the thing I want to work on. Now, for the hair, I'm just going to be drawing it on. It's just going to be a see-through plane. So realistically, all I need to do is draw on my hair design, and then I can take it over to Clip Paint Studio, and I can get rid of all the alphas. So yeah, that's pretty much what I'll be doing. So I'm just going to select the hair. So it currently doesn't really have a material, so I'll just go over to the Materials tab and select the face material that I have. And then once that's selected, I'm going to go over to the paint. And then I'm just going to go into edit mode real fast and turn these, just turn the shading on to smooth, because I'd rather not draw on a flat plane. And now all I just need to do is just set up my brush, and then I'm ready to just start sculpting out and drawing out my little hair fluff. But I ran into an issue where I couldn't actually draw on the face. It turns out that the norms were actually flipped. So what I did is I went to this drop down arrow right here, hit face geometry, and when it's red, it needs to be flipped. So I just select them, and then I'm just going to go up here to the mesh and flip the vertices. So it's pretty simple. And that way now I can actually draw on them. Wow! So yeah, that's a pretty nifty tool. You can actually see the direction that the faces are flipping. I didn't know that for the longest time, but once I finally figured it out by just pressing buttons, it made a lot of my issues go away. So yeah, now I'm just sculpting up the hair, just, drawing the borders, figuring out, okay, what's the general shape going to be like. And I'm not worried about shadows or highlights. I'm just drawing on the mesh. That's all I need. And realistically, I can correct it later, so mistakes are fine. But then after a while, I am going to want to add depth, and I go back to my shadows and highlights. And of course, for shadows, it's more multiply, and for highlights, I will be selecting the add function. Just kind of sort of haphazardly drawing the highlights, really just letting the brush do most of the work. And a lot of the hair strand positions are actually, for me, they're dictated by the lack of highlighting. Once again, it's more of a product of just letting the brush do its thing and just following the kind of general slope of the hair, and then shrinking the brush down to a finer point to get some of those finer details. Okay, good. And then once again, whenever I'm done, I'm just going to go up to Image, Save As, and save over my project. And then I'm going to bring it into my Clip Paint Studio file asset by Control, copying over, pasting it. And then from here, I'm going to turn everything else off, because now I need to get rid of the alphas, which is this ugly gray that doesn't need to exist. So just going to my eraser tool, I'm just going to simply erase over it. I think you can also use masks. Also, if you don't want to erase anything, I don't generally use them because I'm just simply not used to using them. I can use them, I just don't. But that is an option. So yeah, just gonna erase around this. And then what ends up happening, unfortunately, is I actually forget to bring the extra bang piece back up. So for a while, she'll just have, one of her bangs, and part of it's missing. I don't realize it because, the big bang section is covering the hair. So save it out, and that's how we'll be operating for the longest time. What are my cats doing? Can you stop? How did you end up there? So yeah, my cat is on top of my bookshelf. Oh well, as long as he's happy. Okay, yeah, so we're just gonna bring in this new texture, and bada bing bada boom, the elfers are gone. Also those, that hair on the side, but we'll deal with that later. And next, I'm gonna do more mesh finagling. Going to move around these vertices, because I'm just not particularly happy where they are. And also, I need to kind of just optimize this a bit. So, I'll just get rid of these by making some edge cuts, and yeah, that's pretty much it. Now, moving the vertices around will distort the texture a bit, but I'm actually okay with that, really. That doesn't matter to me too much. I'm fine with that. Make another edge loop, get rid of this, blah, blah, blah. And yeah, that's pretty much how this goes. Also, if you don't like any of the warping, like say right there, you don't like that warping, you can actually select the entire mesh, go over to the UV tab right there, and you can actually move these vertices up and down. Give me a second, let me just change some things around. Yeah, and you can move them around. It also affects on what it looks like on your actual mesh, so that's pretty handy. So you can move these things around a lot. And quite editable. And I like the way that looks. Yeah. You know what? Hold on. Let me just add some hair right back here. Give me a second. Nope. Let me select the actual head. Go back to painting, and I'm going to use / and I'll start making some hair by just scratching it in. And once that's done, I can go ahead and work on the tie of this headscarf. So yeah, I can actually, if I don't like where things are positioned, I can actually move the UVs around. Who would have thought? And of course, this time I need to copy the actual the actual color over here. So I'll get the hex code on that. It's kind of just kind of general, doesn't matter. Color it in, and then we'll work on some shadows and highlights. Keep that. I'm going to go ahead. I can keep the mirror modifier on. If you remember, I actually overlaid the UVs on this, so it doesn't really matter that much. In fact, I'm going to have to turn it off once I work on this tie part up here. So, yep, let me turn that off. And that way I can, add some little knot bits like that. Using my shadows. And make it a little darker, so, make it a bit more extreme. Work with some various shades, and of course the highlights, the beautiful highlights. And I don't particularly care too much if it's overly accurate. It doesn't really matter. Whatever really helps. Just use the tools at your convenience. And then once again, I'm going to shadow and highlight the absolute heck out of this. Although I would like it to fold properly. So it can kind of help to look at an example of how this kind of thing would fold. Which, it's whatever. But yeah, I pretty much get the general shape. And since I'll be cutting off some of these bits anyway, I can actually go over my lines, because I'm just going to get rid of them in post. So yeah, shadows and highlights, that's the name of the game. I don't care about how accurate or not or sloppy it is right now. I just need to get the general shapes, and I can, make adjustments as I need. Then, as before, I bring it into my clip paint project, save, and then I'm now going to start erasing things. Everything that I don't need. I could also bring in my the UVs for this particular asset, but right now I think it's pretty self-explanatory, so I'm just gonna get rid of what I'm pretty sure I don't need, and then go from there. And then once again, I forget about the bangs, I save it out, and I bring it into the project to work on the next one. Oh yes, Granny's looking nice. Very lovely. Everyone loves you, Granny. But we're not done yet. And we're not even done with the face yet, because if you notice, she does not have glasses yet. Now I think I'm going to cheat, because I've already drawn them exactly how I want them in my concept art. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to bring the glasses in. I'm just going to make a new folder called glasses. Go over here. And nope, over here. There we are. I'm going to find my glasses. Where are they? Second. There they are. And I'm just going to copy and paste them in. Now I don't really need both of them. I can actually kind of flip them. Mirror modifier them, whatever you want. So I'm just going to stick them somewhere where there's an alpha just to save myself some time. And then once I get an approximate size that I want, which, you know, whatever, or now, whichever one, doesn't matter. I'm just going to go ahead and, something. Hold on. No, let me turn this counterclockwise, copy it, hide that, space it in, make it a little easier. Then there you go. That way it doesn't distort as I'm moving it around. Okay, so shrink it a bit. That's fine. Now I can erase this. Now we're good. Let me just put this over here. And that should stay out of the hair's way. I can always adjust as I need to. Yeah, and it already has alphas in it, so I'm gonna go ahead and save it out. And then bring it back into Blender. Give me a second. And let me save that. Okay. Okay, now we're going to Blender. And now I'm going to take I'm going to steal some faces right now. So I'm going to take your face, Grandma. Yes, I love you. Duplicate that with Shift D. Move it out a bit. And I'm going to make it its own object. And I'm also going to unwrap it. Hold on. Give me a second. Let me move things around. Let me load up the right thing. Okay, cool. Alright, let me hit P, make it its own object. Very good. Let me set its origin properly. Then I'm going to delete a face and just use the mirror modifier. That way, I mean, it's because, I mean, that's how I drew it to be done anyway. Just to flip it on its axis. So give me a second. Let me just finagle things a second. Turn this thing back on because it's never on. There you go. Give me a second. Let me do some more finagling. I'm just going to even out these vertices because I want them as even and as straight as possible right now. Give me a second. And then once I'm done with all this nonsense, I'm going to select all and unwrap by project from view. And then we're just going to move this into position. And Granny's actual, she looks angry. I'll need to adjust that. But let me get this in just kind of a general position real fast. Yeah, hold on. Let me just rotate these by hitting R and then rotating it at some degrees. That's better. Okay, and let me just, there you go. Let me shrink it down with S, bring it down. That's looking a bit better. There we go. And let me turn clipping back on so it actually stays. There you go. Now I can stretch it where I need to. And I can move these vertices up here so that little branch thing is a little longer and move it. And there you go. Now she has some proper glasses. But it looks like I still have to move some vertices around. So I'm just going to copy that one right there and paste it there. And just straighten the vertices out just a little bit. I will be curving them a bit, but I kind of want it to be in a general position. There you go. Now at the moment, her face is rather flat because she doesn't actually have a nose. Well, she does have a nose, but you know, I don't really think I want to use it, but we'll see. Let me just position this bloody thing first, and yep, she looks lovely. And yeah, that was pretty much a pretty easy way to do it. If you have the UV space and you're making glasses, they don't really need to be a solid object. For me, it works fine if it's a plane. You know, lo-fi graphics, it works perfectly fine, and I'm happy with it. I like the way it looks. So yeah, that's all we need. I mean, realistically, with this graphical style, there's no need to really overcomplicate everything. But when it comes to this nose, I think I'm just going to go ahead and add some mesh. So let me just use K to cut into the mesh, and I'm going to just make some edits real fast. And realistically, I'm not overly worried about the texture stretching. To be fair, that I can fix that in my UV edits, so that's really fine. So right now, I'm more interested in just kind of getting the general shape of the nose, because realistically, I think I'd like it to be part of the mesh, and instead of a separate object. You can make it a separate object, and that's perfectly fine. But I think it would just look a bit better if it was just one mesh. Unfortunately, this means I end up with Ingon, so I'm going to hit K and connect these two vertices right here to make some quads and tris. And depending on the direction of my new lines, it may actually collapse or fold the mesh in ways that you don't want. So you do have to be a little careful. And the reason it has this weird the shading thing right now is because right now I need to use flat. That way you can't actually see it. Let me just move I gotta make this adjustment real fast by moving the nose bridge of the glasses up, and it has a nice curvature now. Very good. And now, once again, if there's any stretching of the mesh that I don't particularly care for, I can go back over to the UV tab, and I can just, stretch and pull the UVs however I see fit. But for right now, I just need to, make some corrections to my actual mesh right now before I go there. Like right here, for example. Now the question is, okay, what in the world do I do? Do I unwrap it? Do I shift it around and just kind of make do? This is where some experimenting may come into play. Because right now, you may think, well, that's fine, but I don't like the way it looks. So, clearly, I'm going to have to backpedal and try something else. Now, once again, I can, since these vertices do exist, I can just, I can make them smaller, of course, but what I'm going to end up doing more likely is just undoing all that I've done, minus the actual nose cuts. And, yeah, just move them up and down. Give me a second. It's looking a little better, but it's a little sharp, so, Move up, move it down, and, Welcome to the world of figuring out what the bloody heck to do. Also, my mouth is missing its shading. Lovely, so I erased that too, but that's fine. So I'm just going to fill this in real fast, and, let's see. I can just move the vertices, like so. Yes, these vertices. Let me see, move this up. That's fine. That's looking nice. I'm okay with that. Yeah. So yeah, moving vertices can be a rather helpful tool. Cutting a nose like this can be a bit strange, but you can make it work. And then I'll just adjust the nose a little bit, because quite frankly, Granny has a nice little button nose. Yes. Alright. And I'll go ahead and view that as a success. And so, you know what, I gotta fix the Granny's face palette just a little bit. I could draw it here, but no. I'm just gonna get the hex code real fast, and I'm just gonna redraw it. Now, yeah, I could erase the face, realistically, in Clip 8 Studio, but I'm really just feeling a redo, because I think now I can actually do better. If, my add tool wasn't so bright, so. Let me just kind of redo it, and that's fine. That way I can just make it just a little bit better. And yeah, there you go. I think that's good. Let me just bring it over to my Clip Paint Studio file and save it. So I have all the saves. I'm never backtracking, theoretically. And yeah, that looks nice. And now, Neonate, it is time to work on Granny's dress. So I'll just go ahead and make myself another file over here. So I have a separate file for her body. And I'll come in here and I'll start comping out the dress. Go over to Paint real fast. Bring in my lovely texture. Open line that up, make sure that's as close as possible, bring in the body, and there we are. Go over to materials, so I actually select, not materials, sorry, mesh, so I actually select it. Get that color real fast. There you go. Get that hex code, copy it, and then I'll bring it back over here. And / to single this bad girl out. And hold on, give me a second. Select it first, go to the painting, / there you go. Now I can start coloring it. I'm gonna copy that hex code, make sure my brush is at 100. And I'm okay. I was okay with, you know, keeping the mirror function on. Right now I'm just, you know, getting all the general colors. Just getting the general colors down, just kind of comping it all out. And then once that's done, which was pretty fast, and I'll need to get the color for the actual apron, and then I'll start drawing that out. Details aside, all I need is just where it's going to be located. There you go. And just so I can kind of see the creases of the mesh just a little bit better, I went ahead and just, you know, left the shading flat. And you can't see this, but I do have my concept art over on my other monitor. So this kind of helps me kind of know exactly where to put things. Very nice. Just need to draw out the general shape, and of course the straps. I'm thinking that this is just something that wraps around your neck. Hello, cat. There you go. Just wrap that around there. And yeah, this is when using the mirror modifier is just the best thing in the world. Now I'm ready to smooth everything out, because now I don't need to know where all the creases are. I mean, yeah, in retrospect, I could have just, you know, saved this out and just filled it in a Clip Paint Studio, but realistically, I like the feeling of painting, so I'm okay with it. Now for the back straps, it's just, you know, color in the general shape and make some little loops where she clearly tied it. There we go. Very nice. And then she has this collar doily looking thing, so. But before I get to that, I'm just going to get the texture of her flesh, because I'm going to draw out where her neck is going to be. And from there, I can get the weird doily thing. And once I had that done, I just went ahead and copied the color of that doily thing. Pasted in my hex code right there. Oh, hold on. I didn't get the right color. Hold on. Let me copy that over. Very good. Okay, now. That's fine. A little extra neckline is fine. Whatever. Because I'm just going to draw over it anyway. And then just get the general shape of it first, and then add some, I guess, black or shadow lines just to add a little bit more depth and make it pop out just a little bit. Okay, now I'm ready to work on the apron's depth, the highlights, the small details. And so, yes, I'm just going to just kind of draw out the basic outlines of, you know, the form of her body. And then I'll work on some of the other details like creases and whatnot. But once again, I changed the shading to flat because I kind of wanted to make sure I could see where all the little curvatures and creases were on the actual mesh. That way I can make a more believable body. And once again, we're just subtly building in shape and form, wherever that may be. And even drawing in some of the seam details on the dress as well. They don't really have to be too detailed right now, if I don't want them to be. Yeah, let me change that shading back to smooth, because now I'm pretty much good. I know where my creases are. And yeah, just at this point, I'm just using the multiply tool to just kind of define where the edges are. This also creates some shadows, realistically as well. Not just like, it's not really just outlines. I'm actually making like shadows of where the apron would actually be lying on top of the body. And then of course I can also use the shadow tool to draw in some other details, like where the seams or where buttons are going to go on her undershirt, well, on her actual dress. And using the highlight tool to make that pop out a bit, get the edges proper. Using the shadow tool to make harsher edges, and of course drawing folds wherever I need them. And this is I view this as kind of just letting the brush do most of the work and just kind of hinting where things are. After the brush has more or less decided where like a crease or something is gonna end up going, well, at that point I can then maybe add more exact details. But most of this is just kind of somewhat hinting where things are, even with these little creases right here. Well, I'm being a bit more precise on them right now. Realistically, I don't care too much about being specific. As a famous painter once said, happy accidents. And of course, there are sometimes when you're going to want to turn symmetry off. It's a very useful tool, but not every side needs to be exactly the same. But sometimes they can be, and it's rather nice. But like right now, I'm okay with, making these two sides pretty even, because it's not overly necessary to have everything asymmetrical. Sometimes it is rather nice to have some symmetrical pieces. And then you can go back and have some asymmetrical details. Doesn't matter. But yes, I'd like this to kind of flare out just a little bit. So, let me switch over to a screen. Nope, sorry. Add. Screen can work fine, but I think add is a bit more harsh. So yeah, let me just add some edges here to kind of make those pop out just a wee bit. And then make the highlights a little nice buff over here, so this pops out just that little bit more. And then yeah, just slowly over time, just building detail. Now for the dress, I'm pretty much going to just work with alphas once again. So not everything needs to be, perfectly nice. So I'm just going to start, making some lines here, some lines there, and I'm gonna make it asymmetrical. This does adds into my work just a little bit, but I think to get the best look for the rest of the dress, it's probably something necessary. So yeah, those little triangle spaces at the bottom, yeah, I'll be getting rid of those, and they don't matter. So just kind of drawing it out, and it doesn't have to be perfect. Once again, in fact, a little imperfections here and there, I think, will actually serve the dress portion quite well, actually. Because the way I see these folds is they're almost kind of random, and I'm just gonna break up kind of like how the lines are shaped, because sometimes it folds outward, sometimes it folds inward. I'm just looking for a little bit of a folding variety, I think. but for the backup here, I'll just turn symmetry back on and just kind of get the general shape and outline of her back, and maybe add some in these little creases down here, because it's going to cinch the dress just a little bit. And as for the armpit area, oh yeah, let me get this side here. But yeah, for armpit area, it doesn't matter too much realistically, but I just want a little dark here. But I will need some seams, because I would assume that the seam work would happen just right about here. I would probably travel all the way down the dress, but we'll just do this for now. Yes, once that's done, I'll shadow this in. Add some shadow creases for where the seams will be. Very nice. And yeah, that's what this is. It's just a seam. And it would also go up here as well. And this is where you're adding details slowly over time. You don't have to really worry about details just right away. I think it's best to really just kind of sculpt things out first, and then slowly over time work on the final details. Taking a break from one area and going to another, and kind of switching back and forth. That way you can kind of refresh your brain. So now I'm pretty much ready to work on the bottom of the dress. Make some parts pop out a bit more, So that's where the highlights really come in. Okay, then we enter a phase where we're doing both shadows and highlights. Really letting the highlights make things pop out, and of course the shadows just kind of move things in. I find switching between the two rather helpful, and if I make a mistake, I can always either go back or just, put my brush back on mix, and just kind of start all over. But yeah, whether it be shadows or highlights, just kind of slowly just building the shape. And I keep reiterating it, but I think it's really important. Just let the brush do the work. I find that whenever I force things to happen, I've never been happy with it realistically, because sometimes with your brush strokes you might have for this cloth you might have an unintentional fold or something, and it looks rather nice, and sometimes even realistic, because not everything. The reality doesn't really work in straight lines anyway. Real life is not perfect, and while this is, yes, it's a bit cartoony, still some happy accidents can go a long way. So kind of just let that happen. And if you say right over there, I bled into the rump a little bit. It's like, oh, you know what? That looks fine. It looks as though that crease needs to be there, as if the cloth is actually stretching and folding in that direction. So, yeah. As for the smooth and move tools, in Blender, I can't really get them to work very well. So I use them as much as I can here, and then if I need to move things around a bit more, I'll just do it in Clip Paint Studio. Now it's time to make some buttons. So I'll just, give it a white color, move the strength all the way up, and just kind of make some squares. I don't really have enough texture space to really make them detailed, but hinting at them is fine. And then I can use the multiply tool subtly, another kind of bluish purple hue, to get some shadows, and then of course get some highlights on this little section right here, this little doily thing. Save it out and bring it over here. Or not, I could get this right here, this cold thing, and hold on. I can draw a little bit of neck detail. I forgot about this, yes. Will you see this part? I don't know, maybe when she lifts her head, but there's something nice. Just something nice. Once again, just building detail over time. And that's looking rather nice. I need a bit of shadows right here to make these pop out just a wee bit. And yep. Right there. And we're good. It's time for the hands, though. I'm not very good at hands. Not many people are. Not many people actually like hands. Hands are strange alien creatures. But luckily we're doing lo-fi graphics, so it's fine. So shadows and highlights once again, and we can just kind of generally draw where the fingers are and the outlines of everything. And luckily, even though these this is actually a pretty big texture map for hands, we don't actually have to go ham on these things, which I will not. Personally, I'm just going to draw where the fingers are, just, you know, get them kind of generally there. Get my shadows going, highlights where the high parts are going to be, just kind of generally scratch out the hands. And then I'm going to be done with them, personally. So I couldn't help but put some detail in the hands. I mean, that's more of a force of habit, really. But after a while, you kind of reach a point where you're like, you know what? I think this is done. I think this is good enough. And once you reach that point, it's time to move on to something a bit more interesting. Speaking of something more interesting, I need some pockets on this. So I'm just going to go over here, copy that color, get that hex code right there. I'm going to paste it over here in Blender, and I'm just going to scratch out using multiply, and, you know, turning the X modifier, sorry, the symmetry modifier on. I'm just going to make some pocket slits. Far more interesting, in my opinion, than hands. Yeah, that's very nice. And then maybe, you know, a slight, oh, not that much, a slight bump in right here, just kind of slightly hint. Yes, there are pockets here. It's slight, maybe you can't see it, maybe it doesn't matter. Made me feel happy. So yeah, when I'm done, I just save that out, you know, bring it back into the project so I have it saved, which I haven't actually done yet, so let me just do that real fast. Copy that over, and now I can start erasing things I don't need. Like right here, where the dress is. I don't need this, any of this right here, so I'm just going to get rid of it. So it's pretty much like what I did with the scarf tie. You know, just use the erase tool to just kind of get rid of this unnecessary UV space. And then once I'm done, I could just save the changes. And then we'll have to work on the next bit, which will be the sleeves. Now, each section of the body has its own challenges. For the hands, well, they're hands. For the arms, however, I have a different challenge. They're just squares, which makes them a little difficult to work with. So I'm just going to copy the UVs right here and save them out, and I'm going to bring them into Clip-Paint Studio. And then because the UVs are for some reason too big, I'm just going to change the resolution size to 256 by 256. That way they are the correct size. Eventually. I'll get to it eventually. There you go. 256 by 256. Save it out. Copy. Save it over. This way I can work on the arm creases just a little bit better. The next thing to do is identify, okay, where are these faces? Once okay, I've selected them. I know where they are. They're right there, so cool. Now I can start adding the folds, the creases, and some of the extra details on the arm. You can do this directly on the mesh. The problem that I have, well, they're squares, so they're slightly more difficult to work with. And for stuff like this, I find that this works better. Now, in between there, you won't see it that well, but I like to draw them there just in case, I don't know, maybe I'll hyperextend the arm or something. It's just kind of a habit. So once I have the general crease of things, I save it out, load it back in, and I think, yeah, is that good enough? That's fine. And now from here, I can copy that color so I have it to work with, and put the hex code in there, and then I can start working on some of the random details on the actual arm itself. And personally, I don't really need all the arm folds and the cloth here to be overly detailed. I'm more just hinting that there's something here, just to give it something that's more than just a flat texture. So that's just me. If you want something a bit more detailed and I guess more interesting to look at, hey, go right ahead. But for my purposes, I just need it to just kind of be a general look and texture. All right, next up is the feet. Let me just grab this hex code real fast. And you know what? All the tools, everything that I've done thus far, still applies to the feet. Except that the mirror, the symmetry mode doesn't really apply too much on something like this. Specifically because it's already made to have a mirror modifier on it. So, whatever. But, as you can see, I'm just gonna kind of comp out where the skin is, because this is kind of a shoe sandal thing. I wanted something that was a bit more, looked slightly, maybe a bit more traditional than a modern shoe. So, I mean, it'll have a sole on it, but, you know, realistically, I wanted something that looks a bit handmade, something that's a bit more old world, so to speak. So it's going to be made out of, like, wicker material or something. That doesn't mean that the inside isn't padded for comfort. But I thought, you know, having something that's like a woven, like something that's woven would be kind of cool, kind of different, that Granny could have. Maybe she made these shoes on her own. You know, maybe that's just something that she likes to do. She likes to make her own stuff. So yeah, shadows and highlights. This time using different shades of, you know, flesh colors and brown, so, which worked rather nice actually. And then this part was pretty much cross-hatching. Normally you'd use cross-hatching for shading, I believe, but I decided, hey, you know what? I think cross-hatching will work fine to kind of just hint that this thing was woven. I don't care if it's overly accurate, personally. I just need to kind of imply that, yes, this is a woven thing. This is basically a wicker chair on your feet with a sole and paddings on the inside so it doesn't destroy your feet. Shadows and highlights. And then speaking of shadows and highlights, there you go. We're going to add some depth to this thing. You can actually use different colors for shadows. Like I could have used a red whenever I go to shade this thing, which probably would have looked rather nice. But I mean, you realistically do whatever you like. This brown color works fine. I'm fine with it. And when you brush it over the yellow there, it actually does create kind of a reddening effect. So, hey, just kind of experiment and see what you like. For the soles of the shoes, I'm just going to just kind of imply things once again, and just taking advantage of shadows and highlights, and just kind of like comping out, okay, where the edge is going to be and whatnot. I don't care that if it looks, you know, too bad, too good. It's just more of a, you're not going to see it too much realistically. I did think about cross-hatching it here, but after a while I thought, yeah, that looks stupid. Maybe this is just either a leather sole or, you know, a rubber sole or something that's just stuck on there. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And a lot of times when it comes to texturing, a lot of your time will be maybe making a mistake or two and then correcting it, or making a mistake and thinking, oh no, that's, so yeah, skipping ahead a little bit. Don't worry, you're not missing anything. I'm just going to I'm just gonna take these little duck things right now. I'm gonna use the lasso tool to get rid of all the stuff I don't need, and then erase all of Granny that I don't want. I'm gonna use those, and then I'm going to put them on the actual dress texture. So just copy and paste that in, and then, you know, get rid of anything that I don't need or want. Probably doesn't matter, but whatever. Then I'm gonna resize this, and then I'm just gonna place it on the texture. Excuse me. And, you know, just copy and duplicate them over, and then whenever I need them to warp a bit, you know, I can just warp these things a little bit, just kind of, because I need to give the illusion of depth and whatnot, and all that good stuff. But yeah, I can move them into position. Everything's nice. Collapse these together. And then sometimes I like to mess with different shading modes to see what I like. After a while, I just settled on something I don't remember. And then I just made a copy and excuse me, drew the shadows and highlights myself by picking the color and just kind of, you know, using the shadows and whatnot, highlights to kind of just hint that it's actually moving with the cloth. Simple, easy, effective. Then I use the lasso tool to lasso the first one, and then kind of figured out, okay, well, what do I want to do? How do I want to use multiply, or what do I want to use? Just kind of like make them a bit more obvious. And yeah, I also I thought maybe I might want an outline, but I mean, I just thought that looks kind of dumb. I don't really think I think it kind of detracts from it, so I just left it blank. And just kind of simple, saved it out, and bada bing, bada boom, we bring it in, and we'll just see what it looks like in Blender. And Granny, you're looking lovely this morning. Look at that. And I can get rid of all the other things I don't need. Very nice. And then I can just go ahead and apply the mirror modifiers. And I think we're ready for the next section, which just so happens to be giving Granny her eyebrows. So let's make that hair its own object. Select the head again, go into texturing mode, and then I'm going to turn symmetry right back on. And then I'm going to be drawing in her graying, lovely gray eyebrows. And she's a very happy Granny, so they need to be up like so. And I've also noticed by now that yes, I indeed do not have the other bang, so I will fix that in a second. So once again, shadows and highlights and shadows. Right now I'm just sculpting in the little individual strands, getting some shadows where I need them, and really just kind of comping out the overall shape. And once I'm done, I can go ahead and fix that and bring it into Clip Paint Studio. So yeah, going back and forth like a crazy mad lad. Let me just get to the face, and then I will go ahead and hide the things I don't want. And I'm going to bring in my lovely texture as soon as I actually save it out. There you go. After I've done that, then I can bring it into Clip Paint Studio by selecting it, bring it into Clip Paint Studio, copying it over once again, pasting it in here, and bada bing, bada boom. I have everything I need, except for the bangs. Now, I do believe that they are somewhere down there in my document. So let me just erase this real fast. And nope, I don't see it. Where is it? Hold on, let me turn these off. Where is it? Oh, there it is. Yeah, let me grab that, bring it all the way back up. There you go. Turn that on, and bada bing, bada boom. Ah, she's beautiful. I love her. And that was the process for making Granny. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I know this was a long one, slightly different format than what I'm used to making, but I just wanted to make something quick to just kind of, I guess, show some of the progress of the new video and kind of like the behind the scenes and thought processes of making things for these videos and I guess games as well. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope this was very enlightening. And if you have any questions, just comment down below. And you know what? You guys have a fantastic day. And now a special thanks to my subscribe stars. Alfred Bottish, User 5B47D1C8, Razage, Syntax Matters, yes it does indeed, Galte, at least I think I'm reading that right, and of course our wonderful mystery guy. He does indeed know who he is.